影片正式开始之前呢，让我们自我介绍一下，我们是荧光笔工作室 Highlight， 是全马最热血的知识型频道。我们以科普的方式聊关于马来西亚的社会、民生、时事议题等等。我们除了有街访之外呢，也有访谈哦。那有这么多的内容，有兴趣的朋友，你们已经订阅我们了吗？还没的话，现在就按赞、订阅、加分享吧。我们每个礼拜3跟礼拜6呢，都会准时上影片，让我们一起好好认识马来西亚。OK， 回到正片。
非常感谢大家来参加小爱生活节，掌声来欢迎我们的雪莉。
Typography, first of all, it's something that is very niche. So when we talked about art movement, design movements, it's often about European social, political history. So we wanted to see if it's possible to actually discuss typography or design in the context of Malaysia, or in this case, Kuala Lumpur. So this area, most of the shop houses are Chinese. They'll have Chinese signage. So within this time limitation, we're talking about essentially a perspective that it will be Chinese-centric.
We start from Chen Si Suyan.
If you translate into English, it's called Hans Academy. So the reason it's called Academy, because back then during that period, it was not allowed to have any forms of clan association. Yeah, because it was a very tumultuous, politically risky time to actually form associations. That's why it's called Academy, so that the government will not be suspicious of it. So when this was built, it was actually a replica of Chan Clans Association that exists in Guangzhou. So the Guangzhou one is black with red background, and this one is gold.
And then this is the very earlier signage, started in 1896. And the technique of the signage is stone engraving. It's like the first generation of signage technique. Next, we look at the opposite, Zhonghua Dahui-tang. This is actually the parent of all the clan associations in Kuala Lumpur and Selangor. And technique of the signage, the Chinese one, the Zhonghua Dahui-tang, and the English one, Chinese Assembly Hall, they are the original signage for this building. You can see the Chinese Assembly Hall, the font style is very British looking. It's kind of like the classicism font style. Because that time is colonial period, it was influenced by British. After our independence, then the Malay become our national language. So the Dewan Perhimpunan China Selangor were add on. So you can see it was in metal letters. So the technique is different. We can see the spelling of Perhimpunan is an old spelling, Himpon. So we know that this is before 70s, before they standardized our Malay spelling.
If you look at the slides again, you will see that the Zhonghua Dahui-tang had a logo on the left. So the logo is written using seal script, right? And the current logo that they have today is actually something that is much simpler. It's Zhong and Ta, which looks like hibiscus flower, which is the national flower of Malaysia. Calligraphy is not just signage to the Chinese community. It is something that bears certain symbolic significance, right? So the word itself is not just a way to communicate, but it means something. It should be something that's valuable.
This small wooden signboard, Chinese we call it 牌匾. It's also a very important cultural symbol for Chinese. They are usually hang on top of the entrance, either stating the origin of the family or the name of the business. In this case, it's the name of the shop, 建元茶庄. This was written by a very famous calligrapher, Wang Shiqing.
So his calligraphy is known for being very stable, with very strong strokes. So it's usually very preferred by business owners who think that the text, the words, the characters should be stable because it reflects the nature of the business.
But then during 70s, their name was changed to 建元茶行. But they still keep the old signage because for Chinese, a signage is very important. Like cannot simply take down due to like feng shui reason. Okay, so this is the next one that we are going to look at. So in 1969, it used to be a famous brothel in town. During the old times, the Chinese is usually in traditional Chinese 繁体字, and it was read from the right to the left. The English is like in between the space of two Chinese characters, which I think is quite interesting to look at. It got fired and then it was abandoned for many years. until an architect revived the space and make it into a fusion restaurant. So this is a very good example of the old and new coexist together, and I think in a quite a respectful way.
And this was the building that has been preserved. So when we talk about preservation, we need to know that we are preserving something that do not necessarily belong to the past, but something that belongs to, it depends on which period of time that we choose to preserve. So in this case, we are preserving the Art Deco monument, but not the late straight eclectic style monument. It has been repurposed by an architect. It changed to, the name of the cafe is called Cho Cha, right? Which is actually a Hakka pronunciation of sitting and tea. So it's quite interesting to see how different Chinese dialects kind of coexist. Let's go to the next one. We'll stop here at the Pajak Gadai shop. Usually, pawn shop, you'll see multilingual signage in front of them. The reason for having multilingual signage in this case is because pawn shop is usually called the poor man's bank. So it caters to different ethnic communities. So the signage has to be in different languages. But beyond that, in the past, Chinese pawnbrokers are mostly from the Hakka community. Yeah, mostly, but not all. So when they started pawnbroking business, in the slides we provided images of pawn tickets as well as receipts. They have a specific way of writing certain numbers and certain statements or descriptions so that the customers will not be able to read their actual evaluation. So that's the trick, so that they could earn more profit from the pawn itself. So as a result of that, around 1930s, there were protests from other ethnic groups saying that the Chinese pawn brokers are taking advantage of the fact that the non-Chinese communities could not read Chinese characters and therefore cheated on them. So as a result, the colonial government decided to impose a law to say that all Chinese pawn shops must have multilingual signage and must have multilingual description on their pawn tickets as well as receipts. So about after 1940s, you will begin to see that the pawn tickets and pawn receipts start to have multiple languages.
There are a lot of old and new contrasts happening in this area. So this is one of it. This kopitiam Le An was started since 1938, but then they closed shop like 10 years ago. So it was kind of saddening that the shop now become this kind of tourist shop. So this kind of traditional handcraft signage become this kind of computer font digital signage. But this is the norm nowadays.
This is also the kind of vacuum form signage. So this kind of signage is very common in the 1980s. Pak Tai Studio has changed multiple signage. So initially the Chinese characters are written with regular script. So this is what we call regular script. And then around 1960s, 1970s, they changed to a kind of a more 美术字, graphic art typeface.
So this is a 100 years old tailor shop. They custom made for royalty family and also our second prime minister last time. So you can see there is like old and new signage here. The wooden signboard usually won't be complete without this small signature at the side. But in this case, this is not the signature of the calligrapher or sign maker. This is like some auspicious word, 望向 and 生财. So this is also another small details that we can observe on the wooden signboard. And we believe that this is a slightly newer signage, maybe after our independence. Like there's 3 languages here. And also the Chinese one is also 美术字. But then whereas this one, they already use computer font, try to mimic the old sign. So this is another example of digitization of the lettering into like computer font. Now we proceed to the Chichonggai. So this is old dim sum shop. Yeah, they were forced to move out to give way to MRT. We can see the pillar is very beautiful, and this is a new material that we see so far. It's called terrazzo.
So it's called Shanghai plaster and it's usually used in Art Deco building in Asia or in East Asian countries. It's called Shanghai plaster doesn't necessarily mean that it comes from Shanghai, because during that time, Shanghai was perceived as a symbol of cosmopolitanism. So anything that is described as Shanghai is foreign as well as Chinese. It's East and West. Yeah? So Shanghai plaster sort of means something that is kind of modern, interesting, and international. What makes Shanghai plaster different from Western European forms of Art Deco building is that European Art Deco buildings tend to be white or grey, whereas when it comes to Asia, it becomes much more colourful, right? And that's articulated through the Shanghai plaster. So it's a specific material from Asia that innovated the Art Deco movement. And next to this, we have Kedai Permainan Kanak-Kanak Hong Hing. They have two signage. You can see that the way the shop name was spelled or Latinized is a bit different, right? Initially, inside is Hong Hing, H-E-N-G, and outside is Hong Hing. My speculation is because there was a Malay standardization process, so anything that sounds like Hing has to be H-I-N-G instead of H-E-N-G. I think over here as well, you can see that the Wanhua is read as Banhua. So compared to Hong Hing, you know that these two belong to kind of different dialect. So Banhua, this is in Mandarin is Wanhua, but in dialect, maybe Hokkien is Banhua. So the three main dialect groups in KL is Hakka, Cantonese, Hokkien.
This is another traditional Chinese medicine here called Yang Hong Tai. This is a very unique one because they actually mix a lot of different techniques in their signage. From the outside, we can see this foam plastic lettering. And we would like to highlight on the color, so you can see the Chinese word is usually either in red or yellow lah. And then the Malay or English usually in blue or green. And then they also have metal letters you can see on top. This is also another metal letters with like silverish color, and we think it's wood, and then they painted gold color. And there is another Shanghai plaster.
You can see that due to renovation, part of the text has been cropped at the bottom. So this is the original signage. So multiple signage just for one single shop. Yeah, this again tells us that it is not advisable to take down your signage. So eventually when there's renovation, when you open again after certain events, you keep adding on signage. So one single shop will have more than just one signage in different kinds of techniques and format.
Okay, let's move on to the next one.
So this is a medical hall. All these so-called pharmacies back then were called medical hall, yeah, because Yao Hang. This shop started around 1940s. Initially, it's an early modern architecture. In the 1960s, they changed it to this current architecture. So they have multiple signage inside as well. It's closed today, so we can't actually see it.
In Petaling Street, you see this Gun Gate, and then over there, there's Hong Gate. Over there, there's Galing Gate. So whenever you see this gate, you will get a sense that usually the shop sells like food. And we think that this is probably a Cantonese because the calligraphy style is kind of Bei Wei influence.
They borrow calligraphy from the Northern Wei dynasty, so the strokes tend to be more exaggerated. For example, the Gei, the final stroke, it points up. That is a key feature. And usually, if you go to Hong Kong, you see a lot of that, right? You can see that the terminating stroke is huge. All right, so here we have a very old signage. 大光有些构思 and the Sharika is SY and this is SH. So this is definitely an older signage. And again, the Malay signage is often an afterthought. So the Malay signage is always separate from the Chinese signage or sometimes Chinese or English signage. In the past, right, when we talk about colonial shop houses, because when you occupy a shop house, your business, it is the place where you do your business and the place where you stay. So the signage is part of the architecture, it's part of the building. But today, the situation has changed. A business can shift from one location to another location. So in this case, they are fortunate enough to stay here. So you can see that the signage that is part of the architecture and the signage that is not part of the architecture remains one singular whole. All right, so this building is what we now call the early modern architecture. This is after Art Deco, but you can still see a bit of traces of it, like the use of lines. Whereas for the signage, this shop was opened in 1956. We have a photo of the restaurant in 1957. So it's painted in quite a pastel-like color. Again, you see multiple signage over here, Lai Feng Restaurant, from left to right in Latin, whereas the Chinese character in regular script from right to left. And then here, we have metal lettering. This is the original signage. And now you can see that how kind of restaurant have transformed. It has become Kedai Kopi. So this is how Petaling Street looked like in 1950s. Syed Nasir, the director of Dewan Bahasa Pustaka, he had this comment to say. He said that when he was visiting Petaling Street, he thinks that he has gone to China. So that was his comment. So if you look at the newspaper articles around that period of time, there were a lot of attack on why Chinese business owners not willing to change their signage from Chinese to Malay. So eventually you get to see that Malay signage was gradually added. Around 1980s, the government imposed a new law, a kind of bylaw, advertising bylaw. If you check the local advertising bylaw, there is a specification that the Malay language has to be bigger than non-Malay languages on the signage. So this is actually a policy that will influence the design of signage. So that was introduced around 1980s. So that's where you begin to see, right, proliferation of Malay signage in the 1980s because of that regulation. And every time when we see signage, it's not just something that is practical for practical reason. Different communities attribute different forms of symbolic significance to the signage. So signage is not just a way, it's not just a face of a shop. Yeah, it has deeper meanings. It's a reflection of its history, a reflection of its identity. And with that, I hope you will get to know more about KL, and if you are not from KL, you'll bring this knowledge and go back to your hometown and take a look, pay more attention, slow down when you walk across the streets, and check out those signage and see what kind of scripts do they have and who are the calligraphers. Right, thank you very much.